YouTube, what's going on, y'all? It is I, Tevin El Chapo, friends call me Chop, and we are back with another review. This time, we're talking about Schoolboy Q's new album, Blue Lips. Schoolboy Q is a California rapper, part of the TDE collective. If you don't know who TDE is, it consists of Schoolboy, Ab-Soul, J-Rock, SZA, Isaiah Rashad, formerly Kendrick Lamar as well, and many others at this point. Now, this is the first project that Schoolboy has dropped since his album Crash Talk that came out in 2019. Now, I did enjoy Crash Talk to a certain extent when it first came out, but I did find it to be relatively mid compared to Blank Face, his album that he came out before that. In my opinion, Blank Face is Schoolboy's best album and honestly one of my favorite projects to come out of the 2010s. And I've seen Schoolboy talk in interviews and even on Twitter about how a lot of the things that brought Crash Talk to life were the reception to Blank Face, essentially. Just stuff about how he was being told that Blank Face was a flop and how that was his most experimental album. So essentially he was looking for #1 hits, things that can be on the radio when he created Crash Talk. An ideology that unfortunately bit him at the end because Crash Talk, even in his opinion, is not one of his best albums. So coming into this album, I was definitely excited to hear more Schoolboy music. I hadn't heard any of the singles beforehand just so that I can listen to it all together within the album. And now that I've heard the album, I must say this is a really good Schoolboy project. So the album starts off with the song Funny Guy, which is pretty much just Schoolboy doing a quick refrain over a guitar-like beat. I think this is a solid way to start the album considering how the album is pretty sporadic. Similar to a lot of the albums that Schoolboy has done in the past, he does touch on a lot of different topics, a lot of different ideas, and a lot of different sounds sonically throughout this album. Some ideas get flushed out more than others, and I think that this was just a quick, short but sweet intro into the album that works pretty well overall. This leads into the next song, Pop, featuring Rico Nasty. Now this song has a lot more energy, it's a lot more bombastic, and a lot more experimental to the point where I didn't even know how Schoolboy was going to rap on this, but he ended up doing his thing, and Rico Nasty on the back end of the song also went crazy as well. So it's a pretty solid track overall. I think that Schoolboy's energy on top of the beat constantly switching over between a more melodic intro for the hook and then a more grandiose, exciting trap style type instrumental during the middle of the song definitely brings a lot of hype, a lot of energy, and it's very enjoyable. I really like it a lot. This leads into the next song, Blue Slides, which is a lot more chill, a lot more relaxed with the more soulful instrumental, nice sample going on in the background. Schoolboy talks a lot about his growth and how he's had to change from even doing a lot of drugs and everything like that. Also with the name Blue Slides being a reference to Mac Miller and his relationship with him, especially with Mac Miller's album Blue Slide Park, is definitely a good reference and is definitely a good track overall. Probably my second favorite song on the album for sure. And then we get even more hype energy with the song Yearn 101. Schoolboy, again, giving his sporadic, crazy hype flows on top of this super bombastic beat. It's another highlight of mine. I really enjoyed it. And then we have the next song, Lovebirds, with Devin Malik and Lance Skywalker. I think this song is really cool. Again, there's a lot of beat switching going on in this instrumental. You have Schoolboy, you also have Devin Malik talking more about love, and then you have Lance Skywalker coming down at the end, doing a lot more of a melodic type singing on the beat as well. I think it was a solid track overall. It's not one of my highlights per se, but I did enjoy it, and I enjoyed just the overall structure of it too. Then we have the next song, Movie, with AZ Cheek. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Now this song isn't really as much of a song as it is kind of like an interlude essentially. Schoolboy comes in towards the very beginning. The song is very, very short, but it's mainly just AZ doing his thing on a West Coast type beat. And honestly, I really enjoyed it. I never heard of AZ before this point, but I'll definitely be on the checkout to see what more he does past this. It was definitely a good track, a good song, and a good introduction into him as an artist for me personally. Then we have the song Cooties, where Schoolboy just talks about how there's certain people who he has to keep his distance from, having quote unquote cooties and everything like that. I really again like the production on this song as well, and I think Schoolboy just touched on a lot of more personal points in this record as well that definitely touch home with a lot of the other moments within the album too. Then you got the song Ohio featuring Freddie Gibbs. Now this song, honestly, when I first heard it, I had a little bit more hesitation, or a little bit more, I guess I would say they had to grow on me a little bit more than some of the other songs on this record. The beat definitely switches not once but twice, and that already throws me off completely long before we even get a Freddie Gibbs verse at that point. Schoolboy is doing so many different things, the production is doing so many different things, and by the time we finally get Freddie Gibbs at the very end of the song, he gives us a verse that I think is fine, but my biggest gripe with the verse personally is the shot at DJ Academics. Now, I'm not usually here to talk about things that are outside of the music, right? I usually try to keep these reviews strictly subjective to the sounds and the songs itself, no real opinions on the outside world. But I just find it interesting how after all this time, Freddie can still have animosity towards DJ Academics when he has his baby mother, who is not only dropping diss tracks about him, but calling him outside of his name. I'm not going to put the name in the video, but a lot of crazy things being said about his name, not only from his baby mother, but also from Benny the Butcher as well, who is even taking photos with the baby mother as well. It's just a lot of crazy things, and I think it's just mad crazy for Fred to still have energy towards academics of all people at this point. But with all that being said, I think the verse was fine. It wasn't really one of his absolute best verses, but it was enjoyable enough. And then the next song we have featuring Ab-Soul is called Foe or Fox or Foul. I'm not too sure how to pronounce that either. But this is a very enjoyable song in itself. I always enjoy Schoolboy and Ab-Soul's collaborations together over the years. They've always had some of the best chemistry in TDE, personally, in my opinion, aside from maybe Kendrick and J-Rock together, maybe. But honestly, I would take that back. I would say that Ab-Soul and Schoolboy together has always had the best chemistry. And I definitely enjoyed the song. I enjoyed the instrumental. It's very experimental and it's very reminiscent of a lot of their other collaborations in the past as well. And then we have the song First that brings even more of the hype energy. Schoolboy knows how to tone his energy in just so many different ways, and it's super dope to see it, or hear it rather. And I definitely enjoy this song as well. It's not really too much to write home about. He talks about how he was the first one to do so many different things, just so many different topics about him reminiscing in his life and just where he is now, and a lot of things that kind of get brought up not only here but before and after this song. So it was definitely a good song, definitely brought the hype energy, definitely one of my highlights for sure. Next we have the song Nunu, which brings more of a relaxed tone. Now I think that the beat isn't necessarily relaxed per se as much as Schoolboy himself on the song, giving more of a semi-melodic type of flow. But overall, I think it was a solid record. It definitely doesn't stand out too much in the whole track list completely, but it's definitely an enjoyable song on here for sure. And then we have the next song, Back in Love, featuring again Devin Malik. I definitely enjoyed this song a lot. One of my favorites off the album as well. It definitely brings the energy, very much so. It's definitely hype, and it kind of just again discusses just Schoolboy being back in his groove, being back in love with creating music, being creative, being a part of the process, being in all the things that he used to be. And it's definitely an enjoyable look. I think that him and Devin do a great job of being on this super high energy beat. So it's definitely one of my favorites. Then we have Lost Times, which I just saw an interview with Schoolboy where he was talking about this was actually one of the first songs to be recorded for the album. And it talks a lot about just the lost times that he's had with his homies and just in life in general. And a lot of things have kind of happened in his past that brought him to where he is now. I think that it's a good retrospective song. I think that him and the feature Jazzy do a great job. It's really solid. And then we have even more reminiscing on Germany 86, which is not only his birthplace, but also the year he was born as well. He talks a lot about his mother being in the military. He talks about even after her being in the military, her essentially being put on the block, you know, Hoover, and him essentially getting into the lifestyle that he ended up in once they moved back to America and everything. I think it's another dope retrospective song for sure. I definitely enjoyed it, and it's also relatively short, so it definitely is a breezy listen for sure. Then we have Time Killers, which again harps into the point of just people wasting his time essentially, and a lot of the things that he may have enjoyed in his past that may not necessarily be things that are part of his now or his future. I think that this is another reference or another aspect of Schoolboy Schoolboy, just giving us more retrospective, a lot more insightful things about his life, where he is in his life now versus where he's been. And I also find this enjoyable as well. The next song, Pig Feed, features Atlanta's own Childish Major. I think that this song is pretty solid. Again, it brings the hype energy, and not only that, it talks a lot about, you know, cops and the police and what people would want to retaliate against the police. Retaliation, I will use the word. I don't want to say too many things that can potentially make this video get flagged, but it is definitely a good song. Obviously, with the song title Pig Feet, you can assume whatever they're talking about if you haven't listened to the song yet. But I definitely enjoyed it. I think that him and Childish Major did a great job. Childish Major is on the hook, and I definitely been coming back to it. One of my highlights for sure. And then we have the last song, Smile, which is super short, kind of like the intro was. It's a lot more upbeat in terms of just more of a happier flow, happier style, happier side of Schoolboy, showing more again of just him reflecting. And it's super short. Kind of feels like there could have been more towards this idea that just wasn't there in the actual finished product, but it's still a decent way to end the album overall for sure. Now, overall, to be honest, I really enjoyed this album. Now, I want to kind of talk a little bit about just the wait, because we essentially waited 5 years for this album to come out. And when I listen to this album, I enjoy it a lot, but I also can tell that Schoolboy took his time to actually make a solid record across the board. He took his time to experiment with sounds, to experiment with different flows, to even rap better on certain instances, to, you know, just so many different things that I feel like made the time worth it. Now, this is the part where I go on a mini tangent. I'm going to put a little timestamp right here if you want to skip past it. But I want to talk about Isaiah Rashad, right? So Isaiah Rashad, he dropped his last album, I believe 2022, The House is Burning. And there's about a 6-year gap between that album and his previous project, Sun's Tirade, right? Now, my issue with that album that makes this album, Blue Lips, so great is that that album didn't feel like I needed to wait 5-6 years for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that I see a lot of discourse of people enjoying that album, which is great. You have every right to enjoy it. I enjoyed it too. But what I'm saying is that if you're gonna make someone wait years upon years for an album to come out, you have to give us a reason. You have to show us why it took so long. When I listen to The House is Burning, I don't necessarily hear an album that took 5 years to come out. I'm just being honest. Like, I don't hear that at all. I personally hear an album that could have came out 2 years after the Sun's Tirade came out, and I would have enjoyed it so much more. But in the time frame that it took to get it, just to hear Isaiah essentially doing a lot of the same things sonically that he was already doing on his previous project that came out again years upon years prior, almost well over half a decade. So it just kind of was like, it didn't feel worth the wait for me. And that's why I can appreciate this album so much more, because when I listen to this album and I listen to so many of the different things that Schoolboy is doing, both sonically with the instrumental and with his flows, with his wordplay, with his voice as well, I can tell that he actually took the time to make this record. You know what I mean? So even if he may have took a year or two off, I can still tell that a lot of effort was put into this album. So I just wanted to bring that up. You know what I mean? I've been hearing a lot of discourse about how TDE hasn't missed with any of the albums that they come out these past few years, whether it be this album, Blue Lips, whether it be Kendrick's last project that I also reviewed on this channel, whether it be SZA's last project, which I thought was decent as well, or whether it be Isaiah, which, like I said, I thought was decent, just wasn't worth the wait. And honestly, I think that Isaiah's project was definitely the weakest link out of all the projects that have come out lately from TDE's camp. I think that honestly, if he had grown a little bit more sonically or grown a little bit more as an artist in any capacity, I would appreciate the wait a little bit more. But for what I got, I didn't feel like I needed to wait 5 years for it. And again, that has nothing to do with this review at all. But I just wanted to highlight that, just because if we're talking about the same label, and even with TDE and their model of just letting the artist drop whenever they feel like it, or letting the artist drop once every 5 years or so, it's just such an outdated music model in today's music landscape that I just don't find it feasible. And if it's going to be the model that you portray, you got to give your fans a reason to do it. So I just wanted to address that. Again, Nothing to do with any part of this album, but just wanted to make sure I mentioned it. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this album. It's definitely so far album of the year for me. Now that's liable to change depending on what else comes out this year. If I had to give it a rating, I would definitely give it a 5 out of 5 flames. Now 5 out of 5 doesn't necessarily mean that it's a perfect album, but it definitely means that I really did enjoy it a whole lot. But hey, these are just my opinions. Have you listened to Schoolboy Q's Blue Lips album? What did you think of it? Comment below, let me know. And also don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more videos as well. Hit the notifications so you'll always know when videos are dropping on this channel. Again, my name is Tevin El Chapo, friends call me Chop, and I'll catch you next time. Peace!